Hey, what's up, y'all? I was working on Mango Song here for a couple gigs I got cooking this weekend, and I figured I would take this opportunity to make a video on how to play the song. I really love this one. It's definitely a crowd pleaser, and in comparison to a lot of the material that Phish was writing in their earlier days, it's not super difficult to play, although in terms of live performance, kind of nailing the feel and nailing the vocals, of course, is pretty difficult, but structurally the song is actually not too terribly difficult. A couple of takeaways that I want to point out before I get started here. For one thing, the song shows somewhat of a jazz influence. While I wouldn't call it super jazzy, the chord progression is pretty intricate, and it features a lot of what we call 2-5-1 chord progressions. So, for example, we'll see a couple spots where it goes from C sharp minor to F sharp major to B major. So that's what we would call a 2-5-1 in B. It doesn't mean the whole song has to be in B. We're sort of just kind of temporarily making it sound like B is our one chord, but the progression quickly moves on and kind of modulates around into other keys. So it definitely shows some of Trey's jazz influence, and if we transcribe the solo here, which I will give you a transcription of the solo that's in the album version, you can get a couple good examples of licks that Trey played over these 2-5-1 progressions. Another thing that's pretty cool about the song, and I didn't really realize this until I started mapping it out, but the phrases during the verses are 5 measures long, which is just pretty unusual. You know, most things tend to happen in groups of 4 in music. The lines in the verse here go 5 measures long, so that's kind of a cool, unusual thing about it. Makes it a little tricky when you're soloing over it, actually. So overall, I want to keep this video as brief as I possibly can. I made a tab, and I'll put a link to that tab in the description of this video. I'm not going to break down every single note of every single part. I'll let you kind of figure out the gory details using the tab, but I'll just kind of walk you through the parts of the song. So the intro is just this guitar lick here, and this guitar lick comes back in the choruses as well. Starts off guitar only. It's a little lick in kind of a D mixolydian. I'm playing it in 7th position here around this D chord. Do it slow a couple times and then up to speed a couple times. And then up to speed. So I think it goes a total of 6 times in that original version, and that very last time, the ending note is this D sharp here. The reason it lands on that note is because the chord of that particular moment is B chord, which is kind of acting as the 5 chord, leading us into an E chord that starts off the verse. Now, I'm pretty sure, as for the chord voicings on the verse, I'm pretty sure I'm certainly at least close to how Trey plays them. I don't know if I have them 100% perfect, but I'm definitely in the neighborhood here. This is based on watching a couple videos and that kind of thing. The rhythm that he plays is worth mentioning too. He kind of mixes it up a little bit. I'm not sure if it's super scientific, if there's a real pattern to it. It doesn't seem like there is, but basically he tends to either be doing, I'll just do it on an E chord here, kind of alternating like. So that kind of pattern tends to continue through the song. More often than not, it sounds to me like he's just kind of going. The other thing I should point out about the verse is that it's got an AABA form, which is a pretty kind of classic form. Again, shows up more in jazz than anywhere else, but it does happen elsewhere. Essentially, you've got part A, and then you repeat part A, then you move on to part B, and then repeat part A one more time. And there might be some slight variations between those part A's, but the general structure of them is the same. So let me walk you through the chord progression one time, and then I'll play it again more up to speed. So it starts off on E to G sharp minor, D, F sharp minor, F sharp diminished, and then here we have our first 2-5-1, C sharp minor to F sharp, B major. So there's a 2-5-1 in B. Right after this, we have a 2-5-1 in the key of F sharp minor. So it's going to go G sharp minor to C sharp major to F sharp minor. There's a 2-5-1 in F sharp minor. And then it's an F augmented chord to E and B. And I'll take a minute to say something about augmented chords while I'm thinking of it here. Essentially, it's, without getting deep into the weeds of a theory explanation of it, essentially any note in the augmented chord can be the root. It's what they call a symmetrical chord. So this F augmented chord that I played here could also be an A augmented or a C sharp augmented chord. So you'll see in the tab that I've kind of named the same chord fingering differently depending on the context. Basically, I picked the root note based on what I hear in the bass, in Mike's bass line. So now let me run through that chord progression a little more in rhythm and up to speed. So after you've run through that A section twice, we're going to move on to the B section. The lead into that B section is an A chord, which I'm doing here in 9th position with a C-shaped bar chord, and then an F sharp in the same spot using an A-shaped bar chord. And this is the operations at the sync part, right? So it's E, a C augmented, C sharp minor, D, E flat, A flat, and then A flat augmented again. And here, like I was talking about the first time, I called this exact same chord a C augmented based on what Mike is playing in his bass line, but in this case it's an A flat augmented. And then the second half of this B section starts off again with an A chord going to an F sharp chord, and then we're back down to E, C augmented, C sharp minor, D, F sharp minor to B, which again is a 2-5 leading to the 1 chord back in E. So F sharp minor, B to E. And then it repeats the A section one more time. So after that last A section, we're now moving on to the chorus, which is in the key of D. The chords are really just D, G, C, and G. And the way I think Trey's playing them, D chord here on the 5th fret. This G chord is one that Trey uses a lot, and it mystified me for a long time. But what he is generally doing is grabbing the G here on the 4th string, then the D on the 3rd string, and a G again here on the 2nd string, and then grabbing the B, the 3rd of that, down here on the low E string. So it effectively makes it like a first inversion G chord, what you might write as G/B. And then the C chord, he's also doing an inversion, so he's kind of grabbing the 5th fret there and then putting this E note underneath it. You can grab these out of my tab, by the way, too. But that's basically a first inversion C chord. And the advantage of doing it this way is that you don't have to move horizontally at all to grab these 3 different chords. Particularly works when you're singing, right? So you don't have to be looking at your fretboard while you're singing the chorus here. So here's how that's going to look, and the rhythm is worth kind of working on a bit here. So when I put that into context, right, comes back to that intro lick in between the lines of the chorus. Ends off the same way, and then we move on to the solos. So the way the solos flow in this song is that the piano solos over the A sections. Remember, we're in this A form, so the piano's over the A sections, and then the guitar solo takes over just for that B section in the middle. So you play through the chords just like you did through the verse during the piano solo. And then the guitar solo comes in. So I'll play it here, and I have it tabbed out. I'm not going to get into a super in-depth analysis of it right now. I will if people want me to. I'd be happy to do kind of a separate video with us, a little more full-on analysis. But I will say that this solo is very heavy on the chord tones, so if you're aware of what the chords are of each given moment, really almost every note comes practically directly right out of the chord of the moment. And there's just a couple of really nice lines in it here. So Trey plays this solo with a really beautiful, delicate touch. I really love this solo, so I'll run through it as best as I can here. I will point out that very last lick on that solo is a beautiful 2-5-1, right? The chords of that particular moment are F sharp minor to B to E. So listen to those chords, and then listen to this line. So that lick really reflects some of the jazz vocabulary that Trey was really working on very much at that time. So anyway, after the guitar solo finishes up, it goes back and does the A section one more time with the piano taking the lead. And then moves on and repeats the chorus again. Then after the chorus, we have one more A section, and this is the one where basically they take they take the lyrics of all three of the A sections and they basically overlap them on top of each other in harmony. Pretty cool effect. First time I heard it, I thought they must have made a mistake or something, but it's really a neat sound. So anyway, they finished that last A section, and now we're getting towards the end of the song. Interestingly, so they come out of that A section, but instead of doing the chorus in D like they did the last couple times, what happens is they play a D chord, but it kind of acts as the 5 chord leading up to G. And the chorus now effectively is modulated into the key of G, and we're in G for the rest of the song. So you've got this D chord, and then we move up to the key of G. So here's the chorus in G, and he does the chord voicings the same exact way, and even does the same intro lick the same exact way, just now modulated up from the 5th to the 10th position. So now we're into this ending vamp slash piano solo thing, and the chords are the same as they were during those last 4 choruses in G, so it's going to be G, C, F, C, just kind of looping that around. But the piano and guitar do this cool bouncing back and forth kind of thing. I've noticed in newer versions Trey has been kind of getting away from this and kind of treating it more like an improv jam type of thing. But in earlier versions, what's just about always going on is they're doing those chords together, but they're trading off who's on the beat and who's on the offbeats. So the guitar is on the beat for the first 2 measures and the offbeats for the next 2 measures. So it's like G, C, and then switches to the offbeats for the F and C. And the piano rhythmically is basically doing the opposite of that. It starts off on the offbeats, and then the next 2 measures are on the beats, so they have this like bounce back and forth thing happening. I'm pretty sure Trey changes up his chord voicing at the end to kind of build up the energy a notch, and he starts doing his, he kind of starts including this high G note on top of all 3 of these chords, so it's G, C, F, C, doing that same rhythmic thing. So that goes on a few more times, and then we finally get to the very ending of the song, and that back and forth rhythmic thing continues happening, but now they're doing it on single notes, and Trey is literally on the highest note you can hit on a 24 fret guitar, that high E up here, and he's doing that same thing, like the first 8 beats would be on the beat, and then the next 8 would be on the off beats, so it's like... And again, the piano is doing the opposite of that, right? So they've got this bounce back and forth thing happening. And then, and by the way, that is really difficult to keep together when you're trying to play this with the band and the drums drop out and it's just the guitar and the keys trying to hold that down. That is difficult to keep up. But anyway, after doing that, I think maybe 4 times around, we've got our ending. And then we've got B flat 9 walking down to G9. And that is that. So like I said, the tab will be in the description of this video. Go ahead and get all the chord voicings and the exact licks off of that tab. Feel free to hit me up if you have any questions.